Hey soccer friends, I just want to give a shout out to our partner, Team Player. They are changing the game on how you find the perfect soccer team for your player. Parents, this means no more endless social media scrolling to find information on teams. With Team Player, everything you need to know is just a few clicks away. It's simple, straightforward, and lets you find the best coach and team for your player without any of the usual headaches. And coaches, we all know how tough it can be to get your team noticed, but when you subscribe to one of Team Player's team plans, you instantly get access to set up an online team profile that allows you to reach more potential players and showcase what your team is all about. It's super easy and lets players and parents see why your team could be the right fit for them. And if you sign up using the promo code PITCH, you can try any team plan free for 1 month. So whether you're managing a team or searching for one, come on over to www.teamplayer.us. That is TEAMPLAYR.US. And come give Team Player a look. Family-owned Soccer Innovation is your go-to source for top quality equipment. Whether you're a player, a supportive family member, or a dedicated coach, they have everything you need to elevate your game. For players, their innovative equipment are designed to boost your skills and performance on the pitch. From their agility cones to their portable goals, they have you covered. And family members, they offer durable equipment that's built to last because we know your support is critical to your player. Coaches, trust me, they can provide the equipment you need to run effective training sessions and shape the next generation of soccer players. Visit Soccer Innovations at soccerinnovations.com to start elevating your game with them. And if you use the code PITCH, PITCH, you can receive up to 10% off your next order. Hello and welcome back to Chat by the Pitch. This is Ian Babcock, your host. This week I have Coach Antony with Storm FC. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the proper name of this club because I will butcher it, and Antony gives it in the introduction. So I'll let him properly say it because I don't like mispronouncing words because I mispronounce so many. That being said, Antony is a great resource to have around. His episode is phenomenal. It's a 2-part series, like most of them are. He shares his insight and his view of North Texas soccer, and a lot more information is being involved. So let's start this chat and head to the pitch.
My name is Antony Penna. I'm the founder of Kernow Storm Football Club here in the southern part of DFW.
Thank you. Now, where did Storm get its start from? I know that there's history here, and from my understanding, and there's quite a bit of influence that has brought into the Metroplex with Storm.
Yes, Storm originally was a men's team, an adult team, and a women's team in the United Kingdom in Cornwall, where I grew up and was born. I played not at a very high level. I was a bit too small, and I had another couple of sports that were really my top sports. Cricket and rugby were up there, but I did play, I guess you could call it semi-professional over here level. It was a decent level, but things weren't going well where I was at, just really with my mates. My mates were feeling that the club wasn't working well. The club had, the original club, it's called Four Lanes actually. It's the original club that I was playing at, decided that they needed a new manager, and I was young in my teenager years. I got voted in to become the manager and the coach, and quickly learned from those very early days that a young 17, 18-year-old isn't cut out to do men's. Or not cut out, you're definitely cut out. You're not thought of or respected by elder statesmen. I think that happened to me a couple of times in different jobs that I've got there. So I got together with my mates that they were going to leave. And we remember having a meeting at a pub, of course, after a game down on the gnarly cliffs of Cornwall, very cold winter day. And we decided around the table that we were going to start our own club, which did mean also having to start at the very bottom of the pyramid in England. So in England, there's a pyramid, and we'd have to start in the very bottom of the southwest side of the pyramid, which we're okay with. It is what it is. And eventually, over if and an amin, we were trying to come up with all kinds of names. I came up with Grasshoppers because, I quite like the name Grasshoppers from the Scandinavian team. We eventually came up with Storm FC. So Storm FC was born in 2001 in Cornwall in the United Kingdom. And at that point, I did a lot of coaching. So I got injured in rugby. I was participating in like a trial type thing for the schoolboys. So Southwest schoolboys, and I got injured badly. So when I got injured, that was the end of my rugby career, and I was coaching in my local village called St Day. That was the richest square mile on the planet back in the day. And they never really had a youth system set up there. So I was coaching, even from 15, 16-year-old, I was coaching a mixed bag of age groups in one team. So I forget now what the actual age, I think it was U12 maybe back then, but we had 8-year-olds on there. It was a proper big mix because I don't know how big St Day is, but there's a few hundred people that live there. It's not like it's a village. So I was coaching and I really enjoyed the coaching side of it. And because of that, youth, by the time I'd gone coaching a couple of years, I got picked up by Plymouth Argyle, which was the local professional league. Now, I say local, there is no professional team in Cornwall where I'm from. So we're the only county without a professional team. The closest to us could either be Exeter City or Plymouth Argyle. So actually one of my guys that I did one of my licensing with was with Argyle, and a guy called Mike Christopher was with Argyle, and he invited me up there. So when I was coaching at Argyle, what really happened was, and the kids that weren't going to make it, back then it was the YTS scheme, which is very different. We're going back 24, 25 years. So how players were picked up back then, or apprentices or YTS schemes, youth training schemes, were kept then, is very different to how they're kept now. So any boy that really wasn't going to be signed to a contract or a professional contract, I used to tell them, hey, I've got a team down in Cornwall. Let's continue to train you, see if we can get you back into the professional scene. So before long, I had a team in Cornwall playing at the very bottom of the pyramid that was absolutely destroying teams. I had an ex-England player, played on the wing, Robbie Brown. You always hear about a player. I used to play for England at U15 level or U16 level. Let's have a look. My brother was the manager, so I'd never influence him. I'd just say, hey, I've got a couple of boys coming down, play him if you want to play him. If you don't, that's okay. He scored a goal he came on as a sub, scored an absolute worldie on top of a cliff, the pitch from the left wing position. So we knew at that point we had a decent looking player there. So we ended up winning league after league. And actually, we kept moving up the pyramid system within Cornwall. At the same time, I decided that I was going to have an opportunity to come to the States and do some coaching in the States. It's how I knew Richard and how we got along at the very beginning. And I liked it over in the States. So this was going to be, my plan was to come over here. So actually, when I moved over to the States in 2004 for good, I was coming and going since 2001. But when I came over here and decided to stay here and set the club up, I had to give up the club back there. And at that point, it really didn't have the same momentum as it probably did, because I'd already left the club that was over there and I never had the access to players. I was obviously leaving it to a couple of my mates to run, and they just never had I wouldn't say drive, because they had the drive, but they were going through some troubles. I think for most people, if they start something, it's their little baby. The effort is all into that. And if that person leaves or something happens or they move along, then that organization can sometimes hit some troubled waters. So over the time, I think we've got some records outside of me leaving that we didn't want, which was probably, I think, the longest non-winning team. And I think some shellackings was out there as well at some point, but they're still going. There's still a Storm FC going in England. I have nothing to do with it and haven't done for, 20 years now, maybe a little less, maybe 23 years, 22 years. My brother moved away from Cornwall, and then one of my best mates that was running the club moved to Spain with his boy. His boy is playing for a couple of big clubs in Madrid. So he went there. So that's how it was born. When I came to the States, there was a ruling over here. Charles Kudusky had a Storm soccer club. I never knew who he was at the time. And when I went to register the club, Storm FC, it was already taken. That's how Kernow. So Kernow, we speak a different language. I say different language. We have a different language in Cornwall, Kernowek, which is Cornish. So it's a cross between, or it's a combination of Gaelic Celtic and Kernow. The word Kernow, and most people pronounce that wrong over here, means Cornish or Cornwall. So it's the Cornish Storm, yeah. And then, of course, as soon as we started the club, Charlie went to Dallas Texans, and the Storm soccer club was never around anymore. So I could have kept it as Storm after all. And really, we are known as Storm FC.
That's awesome. That's an awesome history behind everything. I think for me as a parent, I like the history side of the clubs. I like to knowing where they start, where they get their lineage from, so to speak, because especially these, I honestly don't know how I would call you guys maybe more on the medium-sized club of the area. I could be wrong. You guys could be larger, but I always enjoy the history of the clubs. I feel like that's an important part to understand because DFW, if you need to go to some of the other clubs out here, have some very cool history, but they don't share it. People don't know the history of the clubs. And I think understanding that kind of brings the forefront of why they're there and who they are. And I love your history. It's rich. It's not one of these ones where a parent goes out and starts it because they got mad because their kid's not playing. There's history. There's true lineage there. So
But there's more behind it than that, because obviously I was coming from another country, but just the logo itself is made up of Cornish and Texan history as well on the logo. So the logo took me, I was in one of my family's friends for life. I used to stay at their house whenever he used to come to the States, and it became pretty much my family here, like my adopted kind of American family. And I remember sitting in his garage and sticking bits together on the logo, and here it is, here's the logo, and it has representation from both where I'm from and where I'm at now. And I'm actually this year, quite funnily, I was in the UK for 24 years, and I've now been in the United States for 24 years. I'm completely at that point where I'm exactly in the UK as I was in the United States. So,
that's awesome. So let's start from the beginning. So what age groups do you guys have, or what age groups do you guys coach from? So do you guys start with U4 and go to U17, U18 and up, or I'll let you go.
Yeah, we also have adult programs as well. So our programming really starts from 2020s, so U3, U4 this year, and they'll go right through to, we've been in the UPSL before, but that was a very expensive venture, and we were trying on that project, we were trying to give the kids that were graduating out of our program still an avenue to be able to play, because I felt we did a very good job in developing our players and giving them opportunities up until they graduated. And I felt at that point when they got to college, although there are a lot of kids that still talk to me, I felt it was just abruptly ended. And I think there's probably a couple of people around town that probably think the same. So by having the UPSL, we were able to connect and still have those players, even though they went to college to play, they were then coming back to play for us and continuing with really developing past that. If I cast my mind back to professional youth coaching when I was back in England, it doesn't stop at 19. It doesn't stop when they go to college. And I feel here, the craziest thing in my mind is over here, especially for girls, we're not going to play in college, so I'm just not going to play anymore. And that's not what we're trying to instill. It's a healthy, lifelong sports. And I think the way that we take soccer, or even sports for that matter, in maybe other countries, or maybe, other countries. I can't speak for baseball. I can't speak for other American sports. And then I come here, it's a very switch on and off. No, I'm in college now, I don't play anymore. That's not what soccer is. And I think sometimes that's because we have over here such competitive, you have to win things, you have to be promoted, not relegated out of some of the local leagues. Of course, that's changing now. I feel that maybe they're burnt out, or maybe it was just to get into college. I don't know. But it seems to me that a large majority of the players quit playing. So we were just trying to bridge that gap and still maintain some development. But it's difficult because you can't have a league at that age group when they've graduated and they go to college and expect to play both seasons, because the colleges are going to come, of course, first. So it's always troubling to be able to get a team for both seasons. And it costs a lot of money. And we're trying to do this as a free venture in order for those kiddos to be able to continue. And again, there's other reasons for it. I didn't want some kid in a field doing something stupid on a Saturday night when they could be playing soccer with us. And I cast my mind back to my youth, my friends, and you're always going to be offered something. I think it was better for them to be able to continue playing and not get sidetracked. I think for a lot of kids, it's too hard to say no.
That's something I've talked to a couple of DOCs and directors of coaches in the community, and that's why some of them offer free clinics, and that's why they offer certain things on the weekend, is to keep the younger kids coming out and still working on their skills, but keeping the older kids out of trouble and possibly trying to help them, guide them one direction or another in life and be a positive influence in the community. And I think what you just said, that's key. I think that establishes the community-centric football that we're missing here. If we continue playing beyond the age of 17, 18 years old, you can start building that community around, and having a Storm community, I think, is cool. Like they continued beyond the age of 18.
I think that's one of the big things that we harp on about when we talk about the culture and the history and the traditions of the club, is the fact that they still talk. Even these players, I've got, shows the age now, the amount of parents that I now have that I used to coach their kids, first protocol, we're going to come play for Storm. That's where we were at. Or people still talking about the trips that we've had and the competitions and the tournaments. Back in the day, when I first came here, the guy that brought me over here, Mike French, I did a camp back in 2001, summer 2001. And I stayed at his house as well. And he said, I've never seen anybody that's got such a love for the game and passion for the game. And so he instantly offered me, he goes, I'll pay for your visa and you can stay at my house if you could start a club. Because in the South, again, there was nothing here. Everybody was traveling north. So what typically would happen is those kids would either continue to play recreational play, but not have a coaching standard there, or whichever way it looked, they never had the opportunities that a lot of other kids up north, especially north of I-30, would have. So and I said to him at the time, I was like, when I come over, it's going to have to be done the way I know it, because I look like an idiot. I'll tell you right now, coming from home, we played things home and away. We had our own fields. I came here and was like, okay, where's our fields? We have to build some fields. We ain't going to fields. He goes, no, we all play in one location. I was like, what? You mean there's no home ground? We all play in this. So it took, and I think it's the same for Joe now. He's come over. It takes a lot of getting used to. And again, I worked with, so Plymouth Argyle in the Championship division back in the day. So I was working with players that I had to try and get signed to Argyle. Coming here, I think you can become a better coach because you're starting with a lot of different range of players from both differing backgrounds and differing standards of what they've been coached at or how committed they are. Back home, a carrot is to be playing professional. Back here, the carrot was, what is the carrot? That was the question. So coming over here, when I started the club, we couldn't turn around and say that we were going to beat anybody. Just can't do. So if what you were going to try and do as a club was say, hey, we're going to come in, we're going to provide winners, we're going to win this, we're going to win that, that was never going to work. I was competing against, back in the day, the Andromedas of the world, the Fort Worth football clubs of the world, the Solars, the Dallas Texans. That's one around. It was Inter back then. But you've got such big clubs. That wasn't going to be our selling point. But what was more important for our selling point was community, was the feel factor that you felt proud of what you put on, the shirt you put on. We created that feel. That's all you wanted. And then really for us, we did on our 95 boys, that was a very good, talented group of boys. We lost 3 boys that were going to another club on the promise that they would have better exposure, better opportunities. They lasted 6 months and came back because they just didn't feel the same, that it felt to be like in a family with us. And for that has been really good. Now, it doesn't fit everybody, because if you don't, as you get bigger, it's harder to be able to keep that, especially if you've got a wider footprint. But at the same time, if you're involved and you become part of it, you see what everything is within the club and what it stands for. And of course, everything that we stand for is exactly what we did back home in England or Scotland for Joe. We develop it. We get players better. Again, we come from a place where winning at the youth level wasn't really that important. It was more about, is the player able to step up to the next age group? Is the player needing to come down an age group? And you've got a couple age groups. Are they ready to be signed to a full-time contract? There's a lot more different reasons to play the whys than it was over here. So that was an important part. And I think that shows in our logo as well, everything that we stand for, what we're trying to do. So I think sometimes that can get lost in messaging, especially in the here and now, when all I see and hear is my kidneys are playing this division, my kidneys playing this league, my kid needs to be here, and the reality is our club is about making sure that we have the best coaching we can possibly give to the kids in the South. Now, of course, we've got a bigger footprint than that now, but that's what it was. We're going to make sure that they have a great understanding of the game, a well-rounded knowledge of the game, as well as giving them fantastic academy style training from back home. Now, no, it's not for every parent. Some parents need that competitive level and they want to go to the next level, and good luck to them. For a lot of people, the majority of the people, that has worked and made soccer players. And in fact, has also seen the full circle where we have a high retention. We really want to work on retention, where that becomes a future parent with our kid, or that becomes a future administrator with us, or a future coach, which we have.
I think that is key, is having your own culture, and I like what I interviewed Juan Martinez a while ago, and he talks about it's the social media parents. It's having, look what Gucci product I have on my shoulder, or a dad, whatever truck he's driving, whatever it may be. It is, he called them the Gucci parents. Look what I have, look what I have. And they do it with social media. And as a parent, we realize that at the young age, doesn't matter what team he's on. If it's a new team, if there's more than 25% of the players are new, it's not going to be a winning season unless they magically mesh, and players don't mesh, and it takes time to develop. And I think what you're talking about is all of that. It's, if you create the culture where development is first and foremost, and I've said this, I don't know how many times now in my life, development, the byproduct of true development, not quick development, but true development, is the end will be winning. If it's an individual success or team success, it is winning. There is winning involved. And it might be scoring that first goal the player may have as an individual win. The team might be successful enough to go and win a tournament. And I always joke, tournaments is where you truly test at where your team's at. League is where I personally feel, league is where you go learn what you've learned in practice and see if it actually works. If not, you start over. And that's me as a parent. That may not be as a coach. But
well, I heard one say that, and I can exactly see where he's coming from. I think things are a little different. I think there's a percentage that maybe they're quite keen on, hey, look, my kid's on this team and this team, regardless of the play time, etc. And it's too easy to fall into that trap by saying, well, they're just on there and they might be sitting the bench all the time. But I think there's a couple of things to think about. Does the parent really know what they want or what the kid wants? I think that's the first question in my mind. A little one now, and for me, I couldn't. If he plays soccer, if he doesn't, he's going to do something, because I think sports, regardless, are good for you. It does instill a bit of competition. It instills getting used to each other. It instills having to, you might not agree with everybody on your team, but you have to figure it out and work together. And it comes from a bunch of different backgrounds and cultures. And so I think in that terms, it's very good. But I think there's also the genuine parent that probably in this day and age now played when they were a kid and played at probably a decent level. So they also have an idea of what they want. I wouldn't say they're about putting on the social media side, but they feel that they know what's best for their kid because they've been through it. And then I think there's also the parent that probably lives their life through, and that type of parent would be the one that knows everything about a certain age group, what freaking kids are in that age group, who they play for, where they ate lunch last week. And those are very minimal, but they're living in a false world, especially, and I see that at a regular occurrence on the very lower ages, on the academy ages. And if we look at it on a bigger picture, the format changes rapidly as they go through, especially here in North Texas, where 77 is really not, there's not a lot of time spent on 77. A lot of people are wanting to jump to that 99 or 11 quick, for whatever the case may be, and the reasons. We're no different. We have to do what we got to do to get that competition level in some of our teams, which they're looking and living through that. And the reality is some of these teams just won't be around, because you can't have 50 9v9 teams and think 50 11v11 teams are going to survive. It's not going to happen. They're going to amalgamate into one. And before you know it, what you knew in U8, U9 and U10 is not going to happen at U11, 12, 13 and up, or especially 13 and up. So the only thing we can do here is promote what we do very well in terms of coaching. Make sure we have the best coaching staff. Make sure they're continuously learning and not resting on what they were and where they were at, but continue to improve and evolve, modernize. And that really then would do any child that spends a year with us or 18 years with us will do them well to move on.
That's awesome. So let's start with the younger ages. So do you guys do clinics and skills for these younger players to start working on the individual techniques for things and slowly progress to more of team formats and moving into more team team formats as you go through the progression of ages, or do you guys, I don't know how to phrase it correctly to be sound well, but it is more of the true development of a player. Development truly is crucial under the age of U14 for individual technique.
Let me start from the very beginning. So we have a very average coach that does the under 3s, 4s, and 5s, namely me. So I think one of the biggest drawbacks from coaching is having a coach try and coach a 3, 4, and 5-year-old. I think that can really show you what you can do. Now, at those ages, the 2020s, 19s, and 18s, we call the Funda Minis. I've had a passion for doing, and actually you just speak to Angel and David Flores, the club that he works, which Angel works for, does a tremendous job with the little ones as well. He also writes books. He's a very good coach at that age, and he's a teacher, so you can see why he does well there. For me, in the very younger age groups, I'll tell you a story in just a second. We won't be naming names, but I'll tell you a story in just a second. But those younger age groups are, can I make it fun? Can I relive my 3, 4, and 5-year-old self, which I do on a twice weekly basis on Mondays and Wednesdays? I absolutely love zero pressure, having fun, kicking around, and just seeing personalities come out. The very first sign of personalities in a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and 5-year-old. It's proper fun. But we do 45 minutes, and it depends on the age group again. So we start at 30-minute sessions a couple of times a week. No pressure. It's free. I don't charge a dime. I just want to have players fall in love with the game. I want parents to no longer sit on a deck chair, be on their phone while somebody else is doing something with their kids. I want them to be involved. I want them to get up and get off their phone and have a good time with their kid, because you blink. I hear this from so many parents. You blink and it's too late. It's gone. You can't get it back. So put down that phone, come out and have some fun with me. And we really just get them to play games. We get them to learn body parts. So a lot of the training that I'll do would be calling out body parts, so that when we do go a year later down the road or a little bit more in the developed, and we have to say, now, what part are you going to use with the foot? What are you going to use here? They can name those parts of the body. So we do a lot of just general teaching, but using a ball. And when we play games in training, we get the parents, in some cases, to make the outside of a soccer field. We have as many goals as we can. Couldn't care less what goal they shoot into. And if the ball happens to go to a parent, they just kick it back in. So there's maximum play time. We're not chasing balls into the cornfields, and it just keeps it fun, engaging for the kiddos. As they get a little bit older to 4-year-old, there might be some kids that just happen to develop faster physically, mentally. Typically the girls do. And for those, we extend a little bit more to 45 minutes and a bit more now on, hey, what are we going to use when we dribble to go score a goal? Or again, couldn't care less. And we play them in rec leagues, and we couldn't care less what goal they're shooting. We'll celebrate every goal there is. Couldn't care less. And we just keep that messaging going to the parent, so that we can really get the messaging started at a young age of what we're doing, so that when we do get to an age where they think winning's important, we can keep it real and say, hey, this is just a journey. Think about where you've been coming. Now, naturally, there's going to be kids that emerge, and there's going to be kids that won't quite emerge yet, because they're late bloomers or whatever the case may be. And we're still talking very young kids here. But what happens is some parents will say, hey, we don't want to play rec anymore. We just want your coaching because we've got other siblings doing other things. Can we just play one game? And then they'll come into our SCDL league, which is a developmental league, or we'll take them to an Arlington Academy league. Again, we're not looking to go very far. We want everything local for the parent. We don't care about competition. We care about what's our next stage shape. Are we able to know what to do with the ball or without the ball? And really, losing, you learn a whole lot more than you do winning. I tell a lot to my kiddos, the older kiddos. I've had shellackings. We've been there, and we've also given shellackings. And it doesn't help either side. But the reality is, if we know how to lose and what went wrong in losing, we can certainly correct that better than if somebody went home winning 5 or 6-0. You go and have a meal and a team dinner and nothing's spoken about it. It's just, hey, what a great result. And off you go. And it's never dissected. Whereas I'd like to think win, lose, or draw, there's always parts of the game that need to be dissected, especially when they get older. So really letting those parents know as we're growing older that it really doesn't matter at all, because 4v4 is 4v4. That's not the end goal at all. So then once they've got out of the fundamental program, we go into the junior academy, the juniors. So that's more like your 5, 6, 7-year-olds. So we have certain type of coaches that are just excellent at that age group. And really, those coaches, unless they want to take a team all the way through to graduation, have those. Now, our school teachers and our high school coaches typically are in the 7v7, 4v4, 5v5 format, because then they're going to have a tough time being able to coach a team December through April, especially locally if they're doing, and most of our coaches are local coaches. They're not able to coach older kids because of high school UAL rules. So for that, some of those coaches are just very good at doing 7v7, 4v4, and that's what we put them in. So then they become trained by that. Now, what we do try and do, again, it depends on the number of kids per the age group and the gender. And one of the bonus things are we got girls that will play on boys teams at the age group. Unfortunately, we can't do boys on girls. It just is, unless you go to the SCDL, we'll do some co-ed in there. But really, we have kids that will play across maybe 3 teams. If you want more soccer, you can have more soccer. And that's what we look at it. So Coach Joe borrows a few of my girls on my side. I promote to predominantly girls now, apart from the little ones. And Joe does all the boys. He takes care of the boys side. So we'll have a player pool of 30, 35 kids. I know in my U10, U9 group, we've got, I think we're hitting 28 or something just in this area on our kiddos. And they get to play 2 games minimum a weekend. So that helps them. And what we do, I then put them in a couple of different formats. So in the SCDL, I split them down to 8 or 9 kids and play 7v7. And then I can spend all that time, because some kids, as I explained before, they might be a little bit more ahead of the curve. Some might be not quite there at the curve. Some may have just said, hey, rec is not enough for me now. Can I come over? And they might be a bit behind. But we can't discard those players. That's not what this is about. We're trying to give them a love of the game and make soccer, whether we like it or not, I want to make it the number 1 sport here. So to be able to do that, nobody should be left behind. So within that 7v7, everybody gets to play, and there's a minimal sub bench. Now, when we go to a more competitive environment, maybe the more competitive players are playing to give them the test that they need, and they've got a couple of subs. But when we go to the SCDL, it's the reverse. The subs get to play, and then the good players get to sit, and they'll come in, and they will help out wherever it may be in the game to be able to pass on their help, their knowledge, to get them to talk more, to verbalize, to communicate. Because I hear a lot on the sidelines whenever I go to games, talk, communicate, but I don't ever hear a coach saying, do they know what to say? Do they know how to communicate? I've had a bunch of coaches, even coaches that have come by that are great at communicating to me, but can't tell a 10-year-old what to do or what they want them to do, because they can't deliver the content with how they want to it done and say and how and when. So there's a lot to be said about having those players then play multiple formats and levels. So we do what's called the 70-20-10, and this is across the club. 70% we expect our players to play within their competitive level. 20% we expect them to play above their competitive level, and 10% below. And most people ask, why would you do that 10% below? And we might go and play a game and it's not very competitive at all. We'll class that as our 10%. What can we do in that 10%? Well, we can do what we do in training, and at the higher end of the 20%, we now have a bit more time. We have a bit more time on the ball to be able to do what we want. We're not worried about what the result's going to be. We just need to do what we've been doing and understand the phases of play, understand what roles and responsibilities are within the system of play. And even those types of things we teach at a young age in a very more simplistic way. And it's also good for we do a lot of coach mentorships. It's good for those early coaches to be able to see that as well in that 10%. There's no pressure. So anyway, after that, so we have them playing across the pathways. And then as we get towards that 9 and 10-year-old, we do see some kids that are just soccer only and have a hunger for it. They'll go to, Joe runs JM Soccer School, so they'll go and get extra training sessions with Joe. They typically, then we start thinking, okay, how can we further develop these? So if they're good enough and the team's good enough and they need it, we'll play them up a year. And then what we do is we're trying to balance that, because for every coach, like you have said before, it's very good to be a 50-50 team. But at the beginning of the year, it's a crystal ball, because you don't know specifically what teams are signed up for. So I'm usually on the phone, or if I got an age group, so I know the majority of the 14s and 15s girls, or the 12 and 13 girls. So I call or I talk while I'm playing games. Excuse me, my boy's deciding to ride the Peloton, so I hope it's
You're
not
fine.
too late. Hey,
Don't
big
even
man,
hear
I'm
it.
on-
He's fine.
Okay. So anyway, you talk to the coaches like, hey, what's your plans for next year? What are you thinking? Because ultimately, I don't want to be in a league where I don't want to be in Division 2 if I should be in Division 1. I don't want to be in a Division 1 of a certain league if I should be in another league in another city, because we want competition. I don't want to waste my kids' times, my time with my family, and my parents' time if we're going to go home winning by a golf margin, or we're losing by a large margin. If we're losing all the time, it's not going to keep the kid in the sport because they ain't going to be happy. You're still going to have some kind of winning or some kind of success, let's say. But if you beat everybody, I think kids get bored. I do. It's like a way. I just don't. It doesn't jive me anymore. So tighter games and more competitive games, I think, is what kids really want. Yes, if you get the odd game here or there where a defender gets to score, or great. A couple of games where we might get a heavy defeat against us, that's okay. That's life. Life is full of speed bumps. It is what it is, and it reminds you that you're not invincible and you need to go on and work a bit more. So again, we have those players. We always have players that if they want to play more, they get to play across multiple teams within the club. And really, we also help out. All teams help out each other. We've got a 17-year-old team that we had 2 goalkeepers get injured. So we had a goalkeeper and a couple more goalkeepers from other teams in the club just keep stepping in and helping them out. Same thing goes for some of the academy stuff at Priest. And now we can have players that will play multiple sides to get extra game time. And to hear we have the same theme going throughout our teams, but it's good to hear it from another voice sometimes as well.
That's impressive. I really like what you talked about, the 70-20-10. I don't think many clubs do that type of mentality. I think it's not a 50-50. Sorry about that. It's not a 50-50 split of what league they're in. It's either they're in there and they just completely trash a team, or they go in and they're at rock bottom. I feel like there's a lot of teams that are not in the 50-50 splits and of playing. And maybe it's a league issue here in North Texas, or it could be partly of both. But I think
there's two, I'm not going to say two types of coaches. There's 2 ways of looking at it. I think the majority of the coaches that I am going to coach against always want competition, and they'll communicate with each other about it. Hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? We need to know where we're going. And then there's possibly another side of the coin. It's a livelihood for some coaches, right? So, well, it's an income for the majority, let's say. So with that, I think there's also, let's not push ourselves too bad, because if we lose every game, I'm not likely to have a team next year. So I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. I'm not going to turn around because everybody has to make the decisions on their own. It's tough. You try and do what you think is right, and you have a plan. And I typically have a cookie cutter kind of plan for all my teams that I go through. I've been lucky that I've been able to take a group of kids. And again, down here, we don't really have tryouts. Down the south, we don't get 60 kids coming to a tryout. What we are with our population around us, and it's our job as coaches. And I think sometimes that can also show where you're at with your coaching side. Are you able to take a selection of players that are a mixed variant of degree of development? Are you able to make them into a team, get them better, have them be competitive? Are you able on year being able to move them through the leagues that you have on your plan, and what I have as a plan, and what Joe has a plan, and the other coaches have a plan? So I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it, and there's always a different view to be able to see, and I think they should be respected that way.
So how do you guys pick what leagues you guys play in? I know that you're in we've came across you guys in pre-ECNL, and we see you guys at the fields. What other leagues are you guys in other than pre-ECNL and ECNL?
So we've been in elite leagues probably 12, 13 years. We were, us and Liverpool back in the day, we were one of the first ones in the NPL South Central, which was a different way of, we actually were under an umbrella that I set up called City FC, but it was a workable deal. But we've been in the DPL, Development Players League, which is a girls' league. It's just under the GA. The Elite Academy League, which is the boys' league. We have dropped from both of those for this season because I think the dollar in the average family right now is really tight. And I think travel constantly is probably not a good thing. Was it good for the players? I think it was great for the players. I think a travel weekend binds the players together. You see somebody different. You're not playing the same team 13. So what we did find is some of our better teams happen to play the same better teams 6 times a year. And it became a rivalry, not for me, but for some of the parents, if it was going one direction all the time. Like, if we played that team 6 times and couldn't beat them 6 times, or vice versa, it became, we're going to do them this time. But it just wasn't fun anymore because you're playing the same brand and you want to keep seeing different types of styles, different types of coaching delivery standpoints, different types of shape and systems. You want to see that because that's what's helping the kid. If you play the same team over the same time all the time, I don't think it's healthy for what we're trying to do, which is, okay, what system have they got? When we're asking the kiddos, so what's their system? What is their threat? Where's their threat? What are they doing when they don't have the ball? What they're doing in transition of the ball? What's their style? What they're aiming for? If we're playing the same team all the time, it becomes they're not learning anymore. They know what they got, and there might just be a couple of players that 1v1s we're not good of, or we're better than them, etc., etc. In that case, the DPL and the EA was fantastic because we got to mix and match some competition that was outside of the state. We're in ECNL Regional League North Texas. We're in the pre-ECNL, and we're also in NPL North Texas as well.
Some big, I always joke, there's all these leagues, and it's just a matter of finding the right fit for your player.
Listen, they're all elite leagues.
Those are.
I think one of the most important leagues we're in is the SCDL that we run, because it's a proper development league. You're able to move players in and out. If players been injured, you can. And people call me up all the time, so it's a lot of work, But a lot of the teams that keep coming back year after year, or the coaches that come back year after year, is because they'll call me up and say, hey, for the last couple of games, we were too good for the other team. Can we try the next? So I just change schedules to make sure that they get more competition, meaningful competition. And you don't want to see somebody get battered all the time. That's not going to bring them back to the league or back to play and enjoy it. So we're fluid throughout an 8-game season in the fall or in the spring. We're able to manipulate things. You're not getting a trophy for winning. It's a development league. So we try taking away that first place. It doesn't matter in this league. What matters is, are you getting the right competition so that every week you show up, it's a meaningful, competitive environment. Now, again, there's just some teams that might not be there, and there might be some teams that are just too much, and there might be parameters that I can't match them up with anybody else because there's gaps or whatever. But ultimately, I think the SCDL, I think every new league that's coming in is directed at one, and I feel that there isn't enough for the other 80% of the players. And I'm probably higher than that. In the elite leagues, it's a low number in there. Now, again, I think there's a lot of parents that don't understand or know what level a kid is, and they see a lot of talk, hearsay, or Facebook posts about an ECNL. I think that's where they need to be, when frankly they shouldn't. But that's another story. But the SCDL, I think, is important for us because we put most of our players go there. Most of them, especially from U14 and under. And we've got kids that are joining us throughout the season that things weren't working out with the rec, or maybe they were. So we have opportunities to be able to put them in those games and coach them for the entire duration without having to take them out if they don't want to, unless, of course, they're tired, to give them the maximum amount of coaching, maximum amount of time on the ball, understanding the shapes. So it becomes an easier transition when they do go to play for a team that's in either, again, we don't do much on the Classic or the Lake Highlands anymore, but to an ECNL Regional League, or to an NPL, or to the Red River, or to Arlington Division 1. It helps that transition, because the last thing I've always felt about is there's no need to take a kid on and park him on the bench. That's not helping anybody. That's not giving him a love or her a love for the game. So I think the SCDL for us it's been a super important piece that we put together. And we used it obviously because we want it for our club, but I think it's been an important piece for everybody that enters that league.
Now, the SDL, I like the philosophy of the SDL. I've heard this recently in the last several months in another state they do this, and something very similar. And this is what they want to do. And it's very player centric, not team centric from the sounds of it. Am I correct? It's more focused on the individual development within a squad and moving them around where they need to be versus winning and then they get promotion and relegated.
Yeah, I mean, I think coach by coach would give you a different reason why they do it. For us, it wouldn't be although there's an IPD in there, an individual player development plan, it's still a team environment. So it's not about moving. So I know there's a couple of friends that do like that moving about. Here's where I come from on that side. Everybody's going to develop differently. If I had the time to be able to put 11 players in 11 different positions, and I had the time, 5 practices a week for a whole year, But what you can do in a training session, which is really where that comes about, is the coaching delivery that comes out. You make sure that everybody can hear the coaching points on certain phases of the game within certain positions or position sense or whatever the case may be. I think there has to be a level of trying to help kids to understand, especially in the development phases of the league, is if I've been a right back this week or a right centre back or whatever shape you're playing, and then next week I'm now a centre midfielder, heck, I only just got to know, I don't even still know what the right back does. I think there's no continuity to be able to help that kid. Now, is that kid going to stay a right back? Who knows? But in the coaching environment, when we go back to our sessions at coaching, you're able to get the information across that covers a wide variety of positions that are being played within certain type of session planning, right? When you go to the game, I think a bit of continuity is going to help with the kid because some of them are going to need that. They need that stability, that understanding. Now, as they go through, I've got kids that started as a right back, became a striker, and vice versa. Understanding that and watching, and you have to identify a player and you have to do the analysis of a player to see what they are best fit for within a system that you play. And really, in this day and age, you don't choose a system. You choose a system based on what you got. Because we don't have, if I had 60 players, this is the system I'm playing, and I'm going to fit those players to that system. And the development side of things, we can move things around, and we do move things around, but we don't make it like on a consistent basis where they just become, because most kids won't tell you either. They just look lost. And I think that's something to think about as well. So I hear it a lot. Hey, I want my kid to play in every position. We've got to go 5 days a week to do that. We're going to have to, because every position requires a different set of qualities, understanding, and physical attributes from a player. And if you're 8 years old, I'm telling you right now, positions don't matter, but we've got to put you in some kind of shape in the game. What really matters is understanding the game. And that way, when you understand the game properly, you understand the system, you understand the phases, you understand the principles of the game. Once you can understand that, I don't think it's too much of a problem to be able to shift you around because you have at least an understanding. And as you develop and your brain matures, when you get older that way and your body matures, you may have a growth spurt and you become one of the tallest. You might be was a centre midfielder, now you become a centre back. It's an easier transition than trying to keep moving kids around all the time. And then I think you can sometimes have more harm than good by doing that on a consistent basis.
No, I get what you're saying with that. The SDL. So let me go back. Maybe I didn't, but I like what you said. I really do, because I think parents don't fully understand all that. But my train of thought with the SDL is if you have a player that is excelling in his age group, it kind of goes back to your 70-20-10, that you can move him to a higher level team mid-season or move the whole team to a higher level.
Okay, that was different to what you'd asked me, I believe. That's why I heard the question wrong.
So, no, that's my fault. I didn't say it correct.
Not necessarily a higher team, but an older age group we do. So we follow what we do back home, basically. So if there's a player that is excelling in that age group, so we've just had it. A player came in yesterday to one of my practices, and she happens to be a younger age girl and was training with one of my older ages. She was training in my 50s, excuse me. Talking to mum afterwards, she said, if you had her age group, would she have to go play there? I was like, no, not necessarily, because the reality is, I believe she's not far off being on this age group. So I don't see how it's going to help her, because really you flipped on your head. You're now 70% lower, 20% in the competitive level, and 10% above. That's not the right format. So there's players, and Joe does this a lot as well. So there's always going to be players that we push up a year. On the younger age groups, it's tough to go 2 years, because we had one player. I've got a girl who's exceptional at 2015. Exceptional. I coached her dad's brother. I coached a little bit of her dad back in the day. She's exceptional. She just has a hunger for it. I put her, and I'm careful what I say, because ethically, I don't want people thinking, why did you do that? But there's a reason why I did it. But we pushed her a couple of years up. The only issue that we had then was physicality, because there's certain, in girls, particularly in boys in later ages, there's certain times, especially now we've gone to the full year, the calendar year, not the school year. The growth rate is horrendous. So she was going on and she physically couldn't cope. Technically, understanding the game, she was probably ahead of the players that were there, pound for pound. So there's also understanding of where we've got to go. At some point, if there's a kid there that they're exceptional, then at some point we say, listen, I think we believe in our coaching, but I think you've outpassed us at this point, and we think that this coach is probably in this club is probably your next best bet. And we want to keep our kids in our club though, but at some point we got to be part of the system and making sure that they're still getting pushed.
But I think
so I want to make sure we've got the right coach.
But I think you nailed it right there on the head. I think that to me is player centric at the end of the day. Even that is what's missing, I feel, in our North Texas culture. Like you said earlier, it's a livelihood for a lot of these coaches. If they lose a good player, now they might go from winning 75% of their matches for the year down to 50%. And now parents might follow wherever that good player went. And their players might be riding the bench, but at least they're, quote, on a winning team. But I think parents have to be educated enough to understand where being able to move from one age group to the next is critical.
The communication is key. If there's solid communication and there is material, we have a lot of material to back it up as well. I wrote a book about it and a technical manual. So there's substance behind, and our messaging starts at a very early age. And the parents are on board. We soon find out, and really, to be honest, I think in most teams, the parents that are looking to, like you said earlier, to maybe post some stuff or to look, because they're always looking for that winning mentality. They want to win all the time. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what they want. That's just not high on our priority list at younger ages, right? When we get to nationals, that's different. When you get to high school, that's really when that competitive nature really needs to kick in, where there's an urge to want to win. Before that, we're still trying to keep them in the game and not burn them out. And let's be honest, we've talked about 2 games a weekend. But when I played, we never had that.
No.
Once on a Sunday. And back then, we're allowed 3 subs. And once you're out, you ain't going back in, period. I think the most important thing is to have the kids playing, enjoying it, and want to come to practice and want to come to games. Because I think there can be a tail off, and that will also show on your coaching side. If you're not engaging them and there's not a fun session, and you have to, chop and change sometimes to and read your players. They might have had a tough day and they've got testing at school. Maybe not the time to go into some technical detail, tactical detail. Maybe that's the time to blow off a bit of steam and have a little bit of an easier session. The coach has a lot to play in that, and the parent, because the parent can be hard on the kids as well. I mean, you've seen it and probably heard it. I've been
part of the problem.
I go into a soccer field as I'm watching a player and their dad or mum come out, and they're absolutely berating. I'll be thinking to myself, I don't want to play anymore. If this is going to be, I'd rather go jump around urban air or something. I ain't doing this anymore. And I just think to myself, I guess it's just the culture and everybody wants to be the best. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's a lot of people that don't listen to their kids or see or listen or just watch and listen.
I think that's key right there, is listening. I was a mean parent for about 3 weeks. And finally my son goes, Dad, you're talking to me too much. And I go, thank you. I stopped the truck. I turned around and said, thank you to him. And he goes, why are you thanking me? I go, I've been putting more and more pressure on you until you tell me to be quiet. And he goes, why? And I go, Bud, I want you to understand, I'm not mad with you if you tell me that you don't want to talk soccer, or if you don't want to do this, or you don't want to do that. I go, as a parent, my job is to help you facilitate your dreams, whatever it may be. If it's his big hobby, stop motion, his big outside of soccer, stop motion, movie making. And I go, if that's what you want, my job is to help you facilitate the best that I can achieve that dream.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Is I think when the parents instigate talking, let the kid instigate it. If they want to talk about it, they'll talk about it. If they don't, leave it alone.
And leave it alone. And that's bad. You have to tell me if we're talking too much about something, or if you don't want to talk about this. If you want to talk about the color of the blue sky and why it's blue today, we can talk about that. It is no longer, we're not going to talk about your game. I'm not going to compliment what you did well. And if you're mean or a jerk to a teammate, we'll talk about that. And that's the gist of it now. I'm getting better as a parent. This is a learning curve for me. And I think
at least they didn't tell you, Dad, I don't want to play anymore. Done it. Just be quiet. I don't want to play anymore. So you got away with that. So that was good on his part as well.
And that was the thing. It was something someone challenged me to do. It was to push my son to the point where he's willing to have that conversation. And every time we have an open dialogue about the sport, and I think parents need to take a step back, and it needs to come from the coaches. My opinion of him might be completely different than his coach. And what I see that he's doing well might be not well for the team or the formation that they're playing in the club. And I go, he's 10. I go, buddy, you have to talk to your coach. I can be there to help you, back you up in what you're trying to say, but you have to have this dialogue. And I think you as coaches, all of them, should feel comfortable enough when the player comes, coach, why is this happening? Blah, 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 blah. And as I have very well said, little kids are direct, awkward, and probably inappropriate in how they ask questions. But that's something they learn to do later on in life. And if they're used 10, they might learn it in 6 years, how to properly ask a question or approach someone. But when they're 10 years old, they know, I'm just to the point. I don't care. I just need to know the answer. And as parents, we have to respect that. And so with your coaching staff, do you all have learned to work with each other and create a philosophy with the coaches on how to approach players and how to approach parents on expectations of the said player in front of you, and how to guide the parents versus the parents coming in and dictating? Because I feel that happens more and more in today's soccer world than it used to.
Well, I think first and foremost, there's probably sports are expensive in America for youth. And I'd say sports, not just soccer, because I hear it across the range. I think every sport has an expense to it. But with that expense comes probably in most parents' eyes an opportunity, let's say, to be able to speak their mind or what they feel should happen to the team or the players. So don't get me wrong, we've had parents that have, in our club, that have also felt that's applicable to them. But no, listen, we've all been doing this a long time. So again, bringing the mentality, and I think sometimes we actually have to scale it back sometimes a little bit and understand what we are and where we are. In England, you can be, and of course, Joe in Scotland, with the clubs that we were at, you can be, hey, we're developing a kid, we're the professional coach, you need to go over there mentality. But that would not work over here because there needs to be, and don't get me wrong, I think some other clubs possibly have that line or coaches have that line. I feel it's a three-way process. We have to be as open, and regardless of how much time it takes away from us, if a parent wants to talk to us, they need to be heard. I think they're also, I'm a very open and truthful without trying to hurt anybody. As long as everybody's on the same understanding, I think that can be very healthy. I think sometimes if somebody was to take it the wrong way without contextual thinking about it, I think it can go down wrong. But however, every player comes in, we have expectations, we have standards. You'll hear a lot in our club, even on our coaching shirts, everything's down, performance standards written right across the front of our jerseys, performance standards. Everything, if you came and listened to one of my sessions, personal standards, training standards, performance standards. Where are we at? Why are your standards lower? Why is your shirt hanging out? Why are you not wearing the right equipment for being at the practice facility? I don't like chewing gum. There's a story behind that. We don't have jewelry. We don't have iPhone watches on. We come to work, we come to play. There's expectations there. What you do in your development process outside of 2 practices a week is going to define who you are. And that's the communication we're going to have with a parent. If you want, and you've made your parent come here and pay the money to come and be coached by the professional coaches we have here, we can do twice a week. What we give you during those days, you should be able to take home, and then furthermore, we record certain age group games, so they got that ability to look on those as well. I would say even that 30%, 40%. It's just we had good participation when we run online sessions about it. But overall, expectations between each coach, expectations between the players are systematically put out, so everybody knows where they stand. From standards such as game day standards to training standards to communication standards, coaching expectation when they're out having team dinners, for me, is an expectation. There will be drinking water. There will be no bad words. You won't hear any of our coaches cuss. So I'd like to think that would be working across. If I hear one of my kids cuss, they get immediately taken off, and we have a chat with the mum and dad. Don't need to hear it. Got women around, and there's a dictionary for a reason. So we have certain standards that we want to live to, and we want to hold ourselves higher and accountable to. And we also want to make sure we're promoting what we do and what we do good. So it's all very well seeing clubs down the road or other clubs around us. To be fair, they're going to do what they've got to do. And if they feel they need to sell themselves by using our name to try and gain the player to that side, we're not going to do that. Everything in us is about us. It's about us. Because if you want to come here, you want to come here because you want standards, you want the standard coaching, you want the quality coaching, you want the commitment, you want coaches. So Joe's full-time, I'm full-time. We don't have other jobs. Our job is to design coaching sessions. Our job is to make players better. So I'm not leaving a full-time job at 5:00, 5:30, rushing to get to a practice and willy-nilly knocking something up and making it work for an hour and a half and thinking the parents or the kids will learn from that. That's not the case. I think why we develop players and the players we have is because we use 4 to 5 week session blocks. We know there's 2 sessions a week. You're going to have an 8 to 10 week block on a certain subject, and we're honing that down, and the sessions are designed upon that. And that is what improves our players. And we expect those standards for those players to be at practice, and those standards for those players to be on it at practice. Now, we're human. It's not always going to happen.
Like you said, I think going outside of the school or whatever the activities may be, you actually have to adjust.
Right, what I said earlier, you've got to adjust. And that's using these and listening.
And using what's between the years.
And to be fair, yeah, I still expect standards from a high school group, but I've relaxed completely. So I hear a lot of teams out there. I say a lot. People I've spoken to, they can't get their kids together for practice because they're at high school, and we still expect one practice. You must make one practice a week. It'll be a very low tempo practice, more games than anything else, just to have a bit of fun, stay together. Do you know what? Most of those kids come two nights a week because we keep it light and we're not run up and down bleachers or whatever those coaches are doing at that time, 5 days a week. So there's a time to do what's right at that period of time.
And so talking about the coaching, how do you, in the 8-10 block week, so let's start with the coaching side. How do you keep the club's philosophy going throughout the club then? Because
I have a technical manual.
What was that?
I wrote a technical manual.
You wrote a technical?
Yeah, so what I do is it's about a 5-year plan. So every 5 years, I'll rewrite what that is to make sure that we evolve with what I believe would be the game to be played. So I travel back home. So a couple of my friends, Ian's at Wolves now, he was at Viking and Forest, Green Rovers, he was the head coach there, and Notts County. Obviously, Joe Malcolmson that we have now is at Celtic and Motherwell and Partick Thistle. So Scotty Allison was at Partick Thistle, he's now at Nottingham Forest. I get opportunities to go home and go to the youth academies. I don't watch first team training. I only go to the youth academies. And when I go there, they're all my friends. So we get to, it's not like I'm stuck behind. I get full access to be able to watch, ask, go for dinner, go for lunch with academy directors. And from there, I build a picture of what the next 5 year looks like when these kids are graduating into the first teams, the second teams, and lower down the leagues. And for that, gives me an idea then of what we can do to adjust, what we would have to do to evolve and stay modern with modern coaching techniques. So it gives us a really good opportunity for modern techniques. Also within that philosophy, it's very difficult in this country as clubs get bigger. So you have coaches that have created their own coaching philosophy, coaching style, and coaching delivery. So it becomes, when I first started having coaches coming over to us and asking to come in, I was very conscious about saying, hey, we want to do it this way, because they would turn around and say, don't tell me what to do. Because there's an attitude, I know what I'm doing. You don't need to tell me what I'm doing. So by writing the book, and it has coaching philosophy, coaching style, how to communicate to the growing kid at different stages, what is expected to be the minimum requirements of a technical ability and tactical knowledge at age phase. It's not 8-year-olds going to do this, and then there's always going to be kids that are a little slower, kids that are a little faster, and of course we talked about that moving up and down. And the club philosophy are all within that in black and white. The competitive platforms, so we call that a competition playing development pathway, and we call it the player development pathway. They all have pathways within our systems that you can go. It's not straight plain sailing. I see most clubs that look on the professional and they have that pyramid thing they look at. Here's this. We don't do that. We have a dead square, right? Because what that tells me is they only care about one kid coming at the top. Right, so discarding kids all the way through to get to the top. However, if we have a square, there's a pathway for every single player in their development all the way through. When you get to the top, it's retention. How do we retain that person? It might be a couple of years back when they become a parent. It might be that they want to go into administration. We talked about that earlier. So that's all black and white within what we have, our DNA of the club. and what we stand for is in that booklet. And then we also have a small, it's not great reading, it's all pretty much words, but we have a charter standard that we can give out to anybody that wants it. That's on our website. And then we also have brochures that we give to parents. So we'll have a player brochure, and we'll also have a club brochure, and it kind of whittles down what's inside that technical manual into more picture nice that the parent can revert back to, if you know. The technical manual is for a coach. And listen, even then it's probably used as a doorstop for some people. I get it. But it's there, and it's there to be used. And that's what we feed through. Now, there's also, we play in the style the same, but you have to understand boys are different to girls. And I think in some cases there is a mismatch between girls' programs and boys' programs thinking they've got to play the same way. It's not that way. Physically and physiologically, they're very different people. And that's something that we pride ourselves on. There's certain things that we can't teach a girl in technical because we don't want to put stress on the ACL. So anything that locks knees and turns knees, we don't teach those. We teach something different that would not put the knee under the stress and the problems down the road.
I'm laughing here because you're the first coach, I think, outside of Richard has talked about anything like this. And because it's just the other day, I remember reading an ad that came across social media, first women's cleat to stop ACL injuries. So I had to go do research on why are they creating cleats before this just for women and not men. And so I had to go do all this research, and I reached out to a performance coach who I know and asking questions to her to figure out why are they doing this. And it's the physio difference between men and women are there, and there's nothing we can do about it. So there's different.
Hey everyone, I hope you all have enjoyed this week's episode of Chat by the Pitch. Anthony is a great guest. We talk a lot. As you notice, it just gets clipped. You get part 2 next week. I'm trying to keep it about an hour so you guys don't get bored with me talking. I think what he has to share is phenomenal. Hey everyone, if you guys have enjoyed this podcast, have enjoyed what I've been trying to do, the messages that I'm putting out there, please give me some ratings, some stars on all the podcast sites that you listen to this on. Give me a review, share with others. The more I can make this grow, the more I can continue doing this. I'm really trying to make a difference in our soccer community. So I hope you guys have enjoyed all this. And until next time, I'll see you at the pitch.